Well, hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us with today's live webinar, Get Your Butt on a Private Equity Board. Great seeing you tune in from around the world, and I hope everyone's doing well. It's going to be another great webinar, and I know there's a lot of anticipation for this one, so let's move ahead. The purpose of these webinars is to educate, inspire, and empower global leaders like you to help modernize boards and ultimately make boards more efficient. We thank you for being here, of course. Our expert speakers bring a wide range of current leadership and board-related topics to the table. And shortly, you will have the privilege to spend some time with private equity expert Mike Lorelli. And he will reveal some pretty interesting details about private equity firms, how they operate, and how to get a seat on their board. My name is Red, event manager for Shaparency, and today's webinar moderator. Before we begin, let me introduce you to our webinar host, Shaparency. Shaparency is a user-friendly, cost-effective digital platform with all the features your board needs to thrive, including modern digital security, an ever-growing series of board effectiveness measurement tools, as well as board education partners. Less than 15% of companies today globally use any type of board technology. Our founder, Ben, is on a mission to change that and make an impact in the board industry, modernize boards and governance operations, and of course, make them more efficient and less boring, as he would say. 3 quick notes before we begin. Write your questions in the Q&A section as we go. Our goal is to answer all questions at the close of the presentation, but if we do run out of time, we will follow up with you after the webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording as well as Mike's presentation deck within the next few days. All certification holders of the globally recognized International Board Director Competency Designation, IBDC.D certification, will also receive 1 CPE credit for attending today's webinar. Now, I'd like to present today's webinar speaker, Mike Lorelli. There is so much to say about Mike and his fascinating career, extensive experience, and knowledge, but I'll keep it pretty short so we can get to hear from him. After serving 2 PepsiCo president roles, Mike has built 5 private equity portfolio companies as CEO and also served as an operating partner for 6 years. He is an advisor to Kenshaw clients on private equity and landing board seats. He was most recently CEO for Accent Foods and serves on 3 boards. He runs his own consulting practice, Faster Landings, and which helps to secure board assignments for qualified executives, as well as showing them the private equity ropes and help senior executives transition. So with no further ado, here is Mike Lorelli, and get your butt on a private equity board. Welcome, Mike, to our virtual stage.
Oh, thank you, Red. What a very flattering introduction. And I have to tell you, what a delight it is today to be presenting to your Shaparency audience. I mean, I just was counting down the minutes and the hours until we do this. So let's see if our slides are forwarding. And I'm going to skip this one. This is actually my favorite slide. This was an article, op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal. That was November 17th of 2017 that commented on that as a result of all the M&A over the 4 decades, there were only 3,671 public companies left in the United States with over 500 million in sales. So that was an interesting point in that op-ed. Now, when most people read that op-ed piece, including a lot of my friends, they thought it was a typo. How could it be 3,671? It's got to be 10,000. You know, doesn't the Wall Street Journal have a proofreader? I mean, this is insanity. Well, you know what? The number was 3,671, and it just caught the world by storm. All the M&A, A bought B, B bought C, C bought D, and the result was an incredible shrinkage of public companies. The reason why I bring this out is that private equity is exactly the inverse rather, in that it's exploding. So if you want to fish where the fish are, private equity is a great place to spend time. And hence that was the reason why Red was intrigued with the idea of doing today's session on private equity. I wish, by the way, this author, and I still have the article someday, I'm going to look him up, take him out to lunch, flatter him for a terrific piece, but I'm just dying to ask him, why didn't you just add one sentence that said, in the same 4 decades, private equity exploded? All right, so enough on that, and I'm actually going to come back to it later. We have an awful lot of topics to talk about today, but I know this is a quick study audience, so we're going to go through this in very good time. I think what I like to do is basically give you the headline thought on each slide, and then as Red pushes the slides out later, you can go through them a little more casually, at your leisure and take in more of the content. But the left side is important because if you don't have a firm undergrounding of what makes private equity stick, the worst thing that can happen to you is to get an interview with a private equity firm because you'll get your toes blown off in the first 10 seconds. So that's the reason why we're investing a fair amount of time in today's seminar to talk through the essentials, the fundamentals of private equity, and then we'll get into some very specific tactics to help you get there. I am not going to be talking about venture capital at all. That's not my space. VC deals in startups. It may just be a test tube molecule. It may be a test market, but it's not an up and running business that actually generates cash. That's a different animal. That's the VC world. I represent the private equity space. When people ask me, well, Mike, what's the dividing line between the two? Because these VC companies that do make it, eventually, they grow up, they become adults and they are making money. I would say the dividing line is if you can point to a trailing EBITDA, trailing meaning past 12 months, EBITDA meaning earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation. If you can point to a trailing EBITDA, well, then you're in the space to be a private equity company. Now, I have to dispel a notion here because most people believe that private equity speak English, and we don't. I just have to say that. We don't speak English. We speak speed. We speak time. Everything we do is all about buying a company, maximizing the value, selling it at a significant appreciation and a very good amount of time. So every move that we make is done with expediency, and that's the underlying current in the private equity space, speed. Now, I'll give you an example here. If you had a chance to interview with a private equity firm to be on a board, and they said, hey, Sally, tell me about you. And your answer was something like this. I'm an action-oriented executive with 21 years leadership experience with Fortune 500 companies. Now, if you said that, and that's an accurate representation of your resume, terrific. God bless. That's phenomenal. But the private equity person, given their importance on speed, they would quietly be saying to themselves, thinking to themselves, 21 years, ugh. We want to exit in year 4, year 7 max. Get this Rip Van Winkle out of my sight. She probably takes 10 years to figure out what an Amazon person can get done in 3 years. So you got to be careful when you're talking with private equity people. Where they're coming from is all about speed. And when you're thinking about your answer to their questions, you need to have that speed orientation. Now I'm going to take Sally again. And if she had reframed her answer and said, I'm a Fortune-trained leader that's made a step change in the EBITDA CAGR in every assignment. Sally, same resume, same person. If she said that instead, the private equity person would say, wow, here comes my bonus. Congress, please don't tax carried interest. This is our person. So be very, very sensitive to the fact that PEs are all driven by time. And make sure you frame your answers accordingly. I'm going to be using this expression throughout EBITDA. So just to take us all back, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. This is the core measure that we use to evaluate companies and their value to us. Now, what's really interesting here is people think that PE has been around forever, and not quite. It was only in 1977 that Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts left Bear Stearns. They were a threesome over there in a small shop and started KKR. 1 year later, there were 80 of these LBO shops, as they were called at the time, in the US. And today, there's almost 3,000 around the world. So this has grown like crazy for good reason. It's a great way to appreciate capital. No, it hasn't been around forever. Now, the people that give us money to invest, and we'll show you who those people are. They give us money to go buy, build, and sell those companies. And we call them our limited partners, by the way. They're not stupid. You know, they're giving us this money time and time over because the results are there. And generally, PE has outperformed the S&P in the US and the Russell indices, the 2, the 1, the 3 in the US by several points. Now, with the miracle of compounding, you could see that over a 5-10-year period, that's quite a substantial difference. You know, I read intensely every time I see Harvard and Yale publish the statistics that show the return on their endowment investment. Now, Yale today, their endowment investment, they don't brag about this, is so big that they could afford to give free tuition forever at Yale. That's how big their endowment is. And Schiller, who ran it for all these years, you know, will proudly tell you the reason he got there was because he always put a material investment in private equity. So coming back to who are the people giving us this money to invest? Contrary to popular perception, you know, it's not a couple of fat cigar smoking people in the corner of a dimly lit room. It's public pension funds, right? It's my pension fund at PepsiCo, corporate pension funds. You know, these are the groups that are investing money in private equity. We all know that a lot of these pension funds, particularly the public ones, they're underfunded and they're never going to catch up in their lifetime. Now, the governor or the mayor or the president or whoever would love to try to close that gap in his or her lifetime, and they'll make a best effort, and God bless that they will make a best effort and have some success, but there's a tremendous gap there. And hence there's this unbelievable awakening to the fact that probably the best way to do it is to put a significant portion of the portfolio in private equity, where you are generating that 3+ percentage advantage, certainly versus the public markets. So 2 models I want to take you through. First, let's just take a look at what an individual portfolio company might look like in the private equity space. So let's say arbitrarily, I found a company that's got 90 million in EBITDA, and I value it at 7 times that. Not a luster company. It's kind of chugging along, not making any great waves. So that's a pretty low multiple to put in front of it. So I'm going to buy this for 630 million. I'm going to put 270 in cash in. These are from the pledges from my LPs. The rest, I'm going to go out and use debt. I'm going to take a loan from GE Capital or my favorite bank. That's how I funded the transaction. And this admittedly is a rosy one. But let's say 5 years later, I've improved the revenue line. I've improved the gross margin. I've top graded the team. I've put in a better IT system. I've done all the things that the people on this call do day in, day out. So it's worth a higher multiple on the exit. I bought it for 7x. The next person is willing to pay me a small premium for that work that I've done. So he's buying it from me for 8x. Now, importantly, I've improved the EBITDA in that period from 90 to 141. Hence, my sale price is $1.1 billion. The first thing I have to do is pay down the note. It was 360. I'm never in any hurry to pay down this quickly. The interest rates are pretty favorable. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. So at this point, year 5, I've got 320. I pay that off. Proceeds of 810. Here is the fun part about this transaction. I put 270 in cash in, which essentially is me representing my LPs, my limited partners. They got 810 back. That is a 3 times cash on cash return. I don't think anybody on this call would be unhappy if after a 4 or 5 year period, I tripled your money. I'll show you some of the other benchmarks in the industry in a couple of moments. So that's one of the 2 models I wanted to show. The second model here is what a private equity fund, the fund itself, might look like. So a fund typically announces that they've raised the cash, they've got the pledges, they're going to go out and buy 10 companies in whatever space. It could be aerospace, electronics, software, whatever it is. They expect to buy, build, and sell over roughly a period of 10 years. So I call this the Pelosi fund. Let's see how the Pelosi fund is doing. So they set out on their mission after they've announced the fund. They bought company A. You could see the outlay of cash. Below the line is an outlay. They bought company B a few months later. They bought smaller company C and D and E. Now it looks like the Pelosi fund sold company C, after only about 12, 14 months. That's okay. Somebody may have come in and made them an offer that was very attractive. And they said, hey, listen, it's only a base hit, but let's take it. But you could see by the length of the bar, they did make money. They bought F. They sold B. Terrible death. You could look by the length of the bars. I mean, this was bloody. I mean, they lost a shirt, on that. That happens. I'll show you the stats. They bought G. They sold A for a very nice profit. Okay, that may have been a 2.5x. Good going. They bought H. D. They sold at a really nice profit here. That was probably a 3x. And that's how life goes on in the private equity space. In the 10 years that they're buying, building, and selling those companies, we refer to the left side of this page as the invest period, where we're doing more of the buying and the building. We refer to the right side as the harvest period, where we're doing more of the selling. Now, by the way, one of the reasons why this is an important dynamic to understand is if you're being interviewed by a board, you want to ask where it is in the cycle of the portfolio company. If they tell you it's in year 7 or 8, man, you don't have a lot of years that you're still going to be on that board. If they tell you it's in year 2, well, you got a lot of time to demonstrate your oaths as an effective board member. Now, black eyes, this is average for the private equity space for a fund that goes out and buys, builds, and sells 10 companies. 2 out of the park, stratospheric, 2x, 3x, 5x. A bunch of base hits count for a lot. And 2, the bank took the car keys. Yes, GE Capital called me up and said, Mike, I see that you're in violation of the loan covenants now for 3 consecutive quarters. The loan agreement says that we could take possession of the company. Let's do it peacefully. We're doing it Monday. We're relieving your CEO. We've hired Alvarez and Marcel to body shop the parts, hoping that we can get 100 cents back on the dollar of our loan. This happens. 2 out of 10 would be average. It does not frighten us. This triples, the doubles, the singles, and the out of the parks more than make up for it and help us generate those hefty returns that I showed. Now, one comment I have to make here is don't limit where you should play. You may be a SaaS person, an IT person. You may be a logistics person. I am, by design, a consumer person when people see that I ran Pizza and Pepsi. Well, the fact of the matter is, of the 13 boards I've been on, 2 have been in consumer companies. The other 11 weren't. 2 happen to be SaaS companies, by the way. One was a hydrocolloid company. One was a cannabis company. But please don't tell my mother that. But the point is, more often than not, they're not interested in purely your functional skills. They're interested in you as a general manager. In the case of the hydrocolloid company that Hydric put me on the board, I said to them candidly, if they're going to be talking about molecules in the boardroom, I'm going to be a fish out of water. And the recruiter said to me, Mike, that's not it. They say you came from PepsiCo. They know you know a lot about succession planning, management grooming, hiring high potential talent. That's what they are thirsty for right now. They don't need another scientist on the board. So I would tell everybody who's on this call, feel free. Now, candidly, if I got approached by an energy board or even a fintech board, I probably would shy away, only because there are so many other people that would run circles around me. But still, I'm going to make the point. Don't unnecessarily put limitations on where you think you could play. Now, in that earlier example of that company that had the 3X, here are the three measures that we use in private equity. Cash on cash being that one. There's nothing wrong with doubling your money. In one case, I had a 2.1x. Believe me, none of the LPs complained about doubling their money in 4.5 years, which is how long we owned it. 5x and up happens once in a while, not frequently enough, but it can happen. The other two measures are IRR. Everybody knows what that means. I don't know about you, but other than the last couple of years, I have never earned in the 20s in my personal stock market portfolio. Any IRR in the 20s is very, very good. The last measure is hold period. Now, candidly, I don't care, me, the PE, how long I own it. But my LPs do, because they want to get paid back. So I might get a phone call from CalPERS saying, hey, Mike, you've owned Rita's Italian Ices now for 4 years, and you're making money on it. Isn't it about time we sell it? And I'll say, you know what, Sally, let me email you the model right now if you're online. It shows that the IRR is 22, but it also shows, based on our projections, if we hold on to it for 1 more year, the IRR will be in the low 30s. Don't you think we should be patient for another 9 months or so? And Sally says, okay, Mike, I'll go back in my cave, but you'll probably hear from me again in 9 months. And sure enough, Sally will call me back in 9 months and pressure me to sell again. Anyway, these are the three measures: IRR, cash on cash. You saw how that worked. Hold period. That's important to the LPs. Now, for those of you on the call from the States, this is where the PE firms are. And no surprise, it's New York City, it's LA, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, Boston, etc. The one strange stat on the page on the right side is where are the portfolio companies. And you'll see this disproportionate number in California. And that's simply because California is the startup capital of the world. And even though the success rate is very, very low for a startup, there is just so many being started every single day. A fair amount of it make it to that trailing EBITDA point that we talked about previously. But I want to talk about geography, because people don't care where you live if you're entertaining a board seat. I have never been on the board yet for a company that was in the New York City area or Connecticut, where I live. They've been all over the country, a couple overseas. And with today's technology, it doesn't matter anyway. So much of it is done electronically, as we're doing this morning. So it doesn't matter. And that's why I say to all the great Shaparency people on the call today, doesn't matter if you're in the UK, if you're in Australia, if you're in the US, no reason why you shouldn't be interviewing for any company around the world. Top fund managers, these are the big hitters that make the headlines. These are the ones that you see on the front page of the Wall Street Journal making the mega deals. I don't encourage people to go after these companies because more often than not, they've already got their board members lined up. I would rather go after companies that are doing lots of transactions, because every time a private equity firm buys a portfolio company, now they've got to go out and create a board, which means typically 2 or 3 outside directors. So I'll take Audax as an example, because Red mentioned I ran a company by the name of Accent Foods for a year down in Austin, Texas. Great engagement. Audax owns Audax owns 87 companies. They bought 41 in 1 year, which meant that 1 year they had to go find 82 outside directors. Holy tamale, what a fertile ground. So I would say if you're hunting for board seats, rather than going after the big kahunas who already have their board members lined up, think about the ones that are doing more transactions, because that's where there is a lot more board activity. We'll come back to board composition, as Red alluded to in a couple of slides. Is a myth that you have to have had a toe in the water to be able to participate as a board member. Not true. In fact, half of the CEOs in private equity, this is their first toe in the water in the private equity space. And those are the CEOs. So for board members, there is no constraint here whatsoever. Compensation. When I buy a company, I was with Falconhead Capital as an operating partner. We bought Rita's Italian Ices. I had my money lined up from my limited partners, which included CalPERS. When I buy it, I start billing all of those LPs 2% of their investment dollars as my management fee. And that goes toward paying salaries and rent, basically keeping the lights on in my shop, nothing more. Okay. On the back end, though, when I sell Rita's, the first thing I have to do is pay back the LPs 100 cents on the dollar. At that point, they're whole. They're not happy, but at least they're whole. They've got their original investment back. Then the profit that's still on the table, I take 20%. That's referred to in the United States as the carried interest. And then the balance that's still on the table, and there better still be a lot, or I wouldn't be in business, I distribute to the LPs in proportionate to how much money they paid in. Now, some really cool stats, because I opened the conversation talking about how the public piece of the pie is shrinking and the private equity piece is exploding. So public companies today, 3,600 in the US, very large boards, maybe as many as 7. Okay, so they've got almost 30,000 outside directors. Private equity, which is the part that's been exploding, has smaller boards, typically 2 or 3. I'll show you why that number 2 is important. About 85% of them have boards. They're not legally required to, but most of them do, which means another 30,000, roughly the same number of outside directors. That's a big boxcar number. And keep in mind, this is the number that's growing. This is the number that's shrinking. And then there's a whole bunch of unreported family companies, venture capital companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The point of this chart is if you want to fish where the fish are, you've got to put private equity on your list, if not number 1 on your list. Some demographics, I hope this will be warm to many of the Shaparency people on the call today. A lot of retired people. Women, this is the embarrassment. That number is 26%. It should be 50. 10 years ago, that number was 11%. I mean, that was really awful. But I will tell you, at least the US companies right now are making a very serious effort to make sure that we get representation of minorities, women on the board. I'm very proud that all of my companies are. Average age 61. There's another myth that you've got to be a sitting CEO. Not true. Only 16% are sitting CEOs. So I suspect and hope that a lot of people on this call today are not sitting CEOs or sitting COOs even. Boards simply like to hire good people. All right. So we've covered a lot about the private equity space. I'm going to draw the line there and now segue to how do you market yourself? And the place I want to start is by talking about LinkedIn. Now, if I were to ask people on this call what percentage of the board candidates they think are found from LinkedIn profiles, I would guess that the answer I'm going to get is 15, 20, 25%, some number like that. Not true. The answer is 50% of the board candidates, 50, half are found from their LinkedIn profiles. LinkedIn profile is basically taken over the search profession. The people at Hydrick, Spencer Stewart, Korn Ferry, wake up every morning. Another bite's been taken out of their apple. They don't know what to do about it. The first thing they should go out and do is buy that book, Who Moved My Cheese, because they really need it. Their profession is a dinosaur. It's going away. For those of you in the United States or in New York City, Yellow Cab is going away. Uber is just taking it over. Same thing in terms of recruiting. LinkedIn matters. It matters a lot. Now, the reason why I show this truncated period is because a good recruiter, if he lands a board assignment, he's going to say to himself, you know what? I'm going to take an hour and I'm going to browse LinkedIn. I've got the keywords that I'm going to punch in. Inside of an hour, if I spend a minute apiece, I'll comb through maybe 50 people and I'll separate them into my A list if I think they're worth pursuing. But that's all he's going to give it on the first cut is an hour, meaning 50 candidates. Keep in mind, there are 720 million LinkedIn users. Okay. So if your profile is not a killer profile, which I define as being in the top 70 or top 100, you're likely not going to be found by that recruiter on his first cut. If your profile is excellent, meaning you're in the top 700, well, you got a chance that he's going to come across you. Below that, you might as well not have ever been born. This is the biggest wet towel I could put across people's faces about the importance of LinkedIn. When I take on in my consulting practice a new client, I always ask, or a prospective client, how much time do you spend on your resume? And they say, oh, I probably have 50 hours in there. And I say, you know what? And he says, I think it's an A. And I say, you know what? You're right. I think it's an A too. And the 50 hours shows. Then I ask, how much time do you put on your LinkedIn profile? And they say, probably 5 or 6 hours. It's probably a C. Someday I'll get around to fleshing it out a little bit more. And I like to throw a cold towel across that person's face because they've got it completely inverted. The LinkedIn profile is more important than your resume. I turn around and I tell that person, take the next day, close your door. Don't do email. Don't answer the phone. Don't feed the dog. Fix your LinkedIn profile. After you've got the LinkedIn profile fixed to the point that it's an A and you would classify it as excellent or killer, take the next 29 days of the month off and you would be better off than all the networking, emailing, sending resumes, and everything else you're doing. Fix your LinkedIn profile. Unbelievably important. All right, so how do we do this? I have had a lot of fun. LinkedIn has been around for 22 years. I was one of the earliest adopters. I got really intrigued by it when it was started. And I confess, in the positive use of the term, I've become a LinkedIn junkie. And since by design, these crazy kids in Seattle don't publish a instruction manual, I mean, that's their secret sauce. I just had a lot of fun, in effect, reverse engineering the algorithm by trial and error. I'm going to give you the conclusion of those 22 years of work. The conclusion is 80% of the algorithm comes down to only getting two things right: the headline and the summary block. 80% of the algorithm comes down to getting the headline and the summary block done right. By the way, ignore this on mine, this banner. This was written by a very famous private equity person. It's an inside joke, so I don't expect anybody to understand what that means. But let's look at my headline. There's roughly 150 available characters to you. You want to put in keywords that a recruiter might use to find someone like you. So in my own case, I've got CEO, interim CEO, outside director, private equity, operating partner, board coach. Those are all keywords for which I would like to be found. Notice the punctuation. Punctuation matters. Those words or expressions should be separated by those vertical bars, also known as spikes. Most people, I would say 90%, make the mistake of using a comma or a forward slash. The algorithm does not recognize a comma or a forward slash. When the algorithm sees a spike, it says what's to the left of it is a different thought than what's to the right of it. So when you're setting out your keywords, separate them by those vertical bars, again, also known as spikes. I would also avoid the temptation to put in your present day job. It's more important that you get your keywords in. After you've got your keywords in, if you have space left over, then by all means, put in your day job. The reason why I jokingly tell people don't start with your day job is because the only person who's going to enter those on the keyboard and do that query is probably your mother. All right, so let's move to the body, the about section. Again, 80% comes down to the headline and the body. The best format for the about section is a good, crisp elevator speech that basically tells me 90% of what I need to know. And then follow that, ignore my China line here, ignore that with 3 or 4 subheads that tell me where you shoot the lights out. So in my own case, I've got my about section, my opening elevator speech. I've got my subheads, which are CEO, interim CEO. That's what I do. I'm an accredited outside director, independent director. Those words are synonymous virtually. I'm a landing board seats coach. And then under each of them, and I'm taking this one here, accredited outside director, and blowing it up. Under this one here, I'm proving it. It says Mike's track record has made him an attractive outside director. He brings Fortune 50. He's master's level at the ACCD and the American College, founding trustee, CEO trust, chair of 3 public company comp committees. I got to tell you, if a recruiter is looking for a board member, I got him hooked by way of my headline. I've got it in my opening elevator speech. I've got this separate call out called accredited outside director. And on top of that, I've got the evidence. I've got the proof. This is what you want to do with your LinkedIn profile. I always add contact information at the end to make it idiot proof to find me. Now, in terms of outreach, there are 2 things. One is email private equity people, letting them know if you're available. This is what a good email letter looks like. Subject line, outside director, digital savvy brand builder, as this person was, Carol Robbins. Very brief note. Now I'm prepared for a public or private board opportunity that leverages my experiences. Attach my bio. Let me know if a call would be useful. Very good, very effective letter, very short. Here's another one. Now, if you are ingenious and you really want to separate yourself from a lot of other emails, I got to tell you, Rick Bernheim, client of mine, did this. His subject line was 4th Industrial Revolution. Now, if I saw that in my inbox, I unquestionably would swallow that bait, and I would want to read what this person had to say. 4th Industrial Revolution. I've not heard that expression before. But then I go down in his email, and he's got this line that I underlined. He's got a keen ability to decode complex situations and provide innovative, practical, implementable solutions. Holy tamale. This guy's the opposite of a McKinsey $500,000 study. He's gonna give me stuff that I can go do something with today. I gotta meet this person. So I would tell you, keep your letter short, good subject line, to the degree you can create a high amount of intrigue with your choice of words in the subject line, all the better. And if you have some really unique skills that you think separate you from other people, don't be bashful about telling the private equity person about it. But it does work emailing private equity people. Typical PE board, very small. The CEO from the company, 3 people from the PE firm, so they have control. 2 or 3 outside directors. Now the 3 from the PE firm would be the operating partner who's overseeing that investment, the VP or principal who's overseeing it, and the analyst at the bottom of their totem pole who's doing all the grunt work. So those are the 3 people you'd be interviewing with. 2 or 3 outside directors. PEs watch every penny. So they keep the number small. The reason why they have outside directors is in the spirit of good governance. Now, in the spirit of good governance, you need outside directors on the comp committee and on the audit committee. Otherwise, you do not have good governance. And that's the reason why usually there are two, sometimes three outside directors, because you need those two or three people to be on those two committees. This is the last tool I'm going to show you very, very briefly. If you have the time and the patience, draw out a skills map of what skills you think that company needs to be successful in the marketplace. List those skills in descending order on the x-axis, as I've done here. In this particular company by the name of AeroGrow, on the y-axis, I slotted in names of VPs or existing board members that had those skills. And what I showed with this chart, this skills map chart, is that they really had a void in sales skills as well as international. And both are areas where they wanted to migrate to, but they had nobody on the board or at the VP level who had ever done that kind of work. I slotted my own name in here, Mike L. And I actually use this as a handout in my interviews because I talk them through the point that they've got a void in a couple of areas, and I fill that void. Believe me, this gave me a leg up in that interview process. Takes a lot of time because you got to review everybody's bios and LinkedIn profiles. But I got to tell you, if you ever did something like this, prepared a skills map and use it as a handout in a board interview, believe me, you would race to the top of the candidate slate pretty quickly. Now I give all the credit for my graphics and my slides to a terrific lady that I've used. I've listed her here as a reference if any of you ever need any help. She's just a tremendous asset to me in that regard. So I guess, Red, we should be on time. And if you want to open it up to Q&A.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike. This was incredibly interesting and a lot of it that I wasn't aware of. Very valuable. So thanks a lot for that. Yes, let's move into Q&A. So I'm going to make sure we are in view here. And if you haven't added your question yet, then please do so that we can jump into those as well. But for now, I have a few questions already. So let's move into those. All of the advice, what is the single most important thing I should do to gain more board traction? Yeah,
by far and away, it's to get yourself a killer LinkedIn profile. Either use the comments that we've made earlier today or hire a professional. Now you got to be careful there. There are people who would do it for $300 and you're going to get exactly what you paid for. You should be paying about $1,500 for someone who really knows what they're doing with a LinkedIn profile. But Red, by far and away, close your door, don't feed the dog, don't answer the phone, fix your LinkedIn profile.
Perfect. Next question here. Are there various board portals and are they worthwhile?
Yeah. So your own, I would say I would put at the top of the list. Shaparency. I would put that at the top of the list. And you guys have gone from zero to most notable, in the board portal space, out there. So I would say I would put yours number one on the list, candidly.
Thank you very much. And who should I email at private equity firms?
Yeah, so you want to go to the decision maker. And in that one earlier slide, I won't flip back to it. The operating partner is the top individual. Usually a PE firm will assign 3 of their people to each of their companies. And those 3 are the operating partner, a very senior person, a VP or principal titled person. That person will do some of the medium lifting, the negotiating with the banks, et cetera, and then an analyst. But the top dog is the operating partner. That's the decision maker. That's the individual that's going to put you on that board. So if you have access to private equity info, PitchBook, or whatever other source, or just go online, to their website, and it'll show you who the operating partners are. Those are your targets.
Great, thank you. What percentage of board members are investors in the portfolio? Is the PE board a pay-to-play model?
Well, okay, it's a very good question. not just for board members, but also for candidates who may be interviewing to be the CEO or the CFO of a private equity company. I would say, let me do the latter first, it's easier. For someone interviewing to be a CEO or CEO of a private equity company, at some point they are likely to ask you, and they'll say it's something like this. They'll say, Harry, we're not greedy. We bought this company 7 months ago. So far, it's already worth more than we paid for it. We'd like to cut you in. How big of a check do you think you'd like to write? Now, the truth of the matter is they don't need your money. They've already fully funded this. They're just looking to see how much of a commitment you're willing to make to that money. So you might say $75,000, or you might say $300,000. I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. The next question, though, they're going to ask is, if you don't mind my saying so, they'll ask this very innocently, what percentage of your liquid net worth does that represent? And if you tell them, well, that's 25% of my life-to-date savings, well, then they know you're going to be losing sleep at night, which is what they want. If you tell them that's 2% of your liquid net worth, they're going to say, this is raffle money, for this guy. He's not going to be losing sleep. You'll lose points. I would say at the board level, you typically don't get asked that question. They may offer it. They mean it seriously, but you will be compensated in terms of cash and options and meeting fees. So there is an equity component that's already built in here. They may throw in the availability for you to buy in additional equity should you choose to do so, but there generally is no pressure at the board level.
Thank you. How do we convince them to consider candidates who have no previous board experience?
Yeah. So, well, I wasn't on my first board until I was on my first board either. Turn the table around and direct it toward how you can contribute. Maybe if you've done the skills map and you read in one of the press releases, the chairman wanted to go international someday, but yet nobody in the company had any international background, but you do, steer the conversation around to the skills that you could bring them. At the end of the day, you want them to want you. This could never be about you're interested in board seats. Nobody cares that you're interested in board seats. Trust me, nobody cares. That's a me expression. You want to turn it around and make them interested in you. Make them feel that when you have the goodbye handshake at the end of the interview, they're saying to themselves, we have to have Sally. She'd be totally perfect for us. So turn it around to your skills. I have not seen a situation where lack of board experience, has been a negative. On the other hand, having board experience, you can turn around to be a major plus. And that's why people who are participating in your network, Red, are doing themselves a lot of justice by participating in your programs.
Great. Mike, is there a particular title or responsibility area within a PE firm to target in reach outs for board opportunities?
Yeah. Again, I would say it's the operating partner. That is the title, the operating partner. Some firms call it managing director. The terms are interchangeable, but operating partner is what you want to look for.
And then we have a couple of questions here on compensation. I'm going to read both of them to you because I think they interlinked. What does typical compensation look like? And the other question is how to address compensation. Leave it totally in their hands, or would they ask?
Yeah. You don't need to worry about this too much, because they're going to tell you. So I would say a small cap should be somewhere between 50 and 100 in cash. A mid cap should be 100 to 200 in cash. A large cap, can be as much literally as $400,000 a year in the cash piece alone, plus the equity component. Believe me, they will present to you. You don't need to ask this one, and they won't be shy about it. Now, I will say there is room for negotiation. And public companies, there's no room for negotiation, because it all gets published in the proxy, what the directors made. And it's usually a standard formula for every board member. they get X for being on the board. They get an additional amount of money if they chair a committee. They get an additional amount of money if they sit on a committee, et cetera, et cetera. They get additional money if there were a lot of telephonic meetings between the board meetings. So that's pretty formulaic. Everybody knows what every board member makes. It's the same cookie cutter. There's no room for negotiation. In private equity, it's pretty much an unspoken word that the two outside directors don't talk about their comp to each other. So if you get presented a term sheet by the HR, by the recruiter, whoever presents it to you, and you think it's a little skimpy, there's nothing wrong with going back, but try to have some data though. Going back and saying, I've got some industry stats that suggest that this is a little on the light side. Is there any room for negotiation? Now, worded that way, that's probably the nicest way of accusing them of being cheap. And since it's not public knowledge, and the other outside director is likely to not know what they're paying you, they're going to pay what it takes to get you.
Great. How can nonprofit board membership help with the transition to PE or other corporate boards?
Yeah, so nonprofit counts, and list that prominently in your documents, in your LinkedIn profile, in your resume, and your bio. List the nonprofits. Even if you're not on a single profit board, list the nonprofits. You look at any CEO's bios, any major CEO's bio, you'll always see that, he's on the board of United Way, the Leukemia Society, or something along those lines. It's very, very notable. The experience counts, and people give you kudos for the fact that you're giving something back. So that does matter. I'm glad that question came up, Red.
Great. And also on nonprofit, is large nonprofit board experience relevant if board role was a major transformation?
Yeah, but I would say if you were faced with the situation where you were going to use nonprofits to get you some ticket punches, so to speak, board ticket punches on your resume, and you had the luxury of looking at a couple at once, I would shoot for the larger, more recognized name brands, like the few that I mentioned a minute ago, as opposed to a smaller regional or municipal nonprofit. Not that the latter is a bad idea, but certainly the larger recognized names, carry a lot of water.
And I think we covered this a little bit in your conversation, but how should one present their LinkedIn profile if they want to enter the non-executive boards space for the first time?
Yeah. The interesting thing about LinkedIn versus resume is that a resume has got to be 100% accurate. There's no room for exaggeration. It's got to be fact-based. You were SVP at ANZ Electronics, right? Or whatever. You cannot exaggerate on a resume. LinkedIn, on the other hand, people accept can be somewhat aspirational. So as an example, if I'm coaching a client who's EVP of marketing and sales at a company, I tell him to put CEO in his headline. And if someone stops a recruiter and says, so where, I don't see CEO in your background here, where are you the CEO? Your answer simply is no, but I'm fully qualified to be one. And I want to have traction. I want to get phone calls from people looking for CEOs. I've got the ability to go do it. So you've got the ability with LinkedIn to be a little aspirational. So even if you're not on a board, I would put board on your headline anyway. And then I would end your LinkedIn profile with a sentence that says something like this: open to select board engagements. Whoa. I mean, that says, you're not just jumping at anything. You're open to select board engagements. I would end your LinkedIn profile with that. Great question, Red. Thank you.
Great. And I think we're going to wrap up the questions, but I want to end with one that is a little bit different, personal for you, Mike. I want to know, how did you get into this space? What got you passionate about the PE space?
Yeah. Well, I had a chance to interview for a turnaround company, and It was, believe me, an 80-hour week. And we managed to do it, and we got some terrific results. But what I enjoyed so much about it was I was no longer carrying somebody else's pail of water. Nobody else dictated what my agenda was. You know, my board or private equity firm didn't know where I was on a given day of the week and didn't vote in it. I was my own person. You know, I ran it. If I was successful, I would make money. If I didn't, I would be fired. I really enjoyed that freedom, and that gave me the juices, you know, to work those crazy hours. I would tell you now, in the 22 years that I've been in the PE space, I wouldn't turn it in for anything on the planet. It's been the most fun. It's been most exhilarating, and most intellectually engaging, and financially worthwhile.
Great. That's always fun to hear that. Well, I think that's it for the questions. So thank you everyone for great questions. And I think we covered them all, but if there's any last minute questions that come in, we will make sure to answer them as well. So for further information or to schedule a demo or to access your free 14-day Shaparency test drive, you can visit shaparency.com. To enroll in a global board education and certification course hosted by our education partner, you can visit shaparency.com/board education. And for more information on upcoming events, of course, it's shaparency.com/events. So right now you can also sign up for next month's webinar, Doing Good Leadership Obligation Opportunity, with global brand strategist Ann Bear Thompson, and that's on June 8th. So thank you so much to you, Mike, for joining us today. And thank you for everyone else who's joined the call. And we love your expertise and all the value-packed session that you created with us today. So,
my pleasure, Red. Thank you.
Thank you. And from me and the entire Shaparency team, have a great day, everyone, and see you soon.